Okay, in this video we're going to put two models head to head. We're going to test GPT-5 Codex against ZAI's GLM 4.6. So I've got a few tests we're going to run through for each model, identical starting environments and identical prompts, and we'll see which one comes up with the best results. So you can see here we've got empty directories for both, Codex test on the left and a Codex chat session, and on the right hand side we've got an empty GLM test project directory, and we've set up our GLM 4.6 model chat here with C-line. So there's three tests that we're going to run through today, and we're going to test three different things: instinct, planning, and execution. So what we're going to do is test one is going to be, can they just one-shot an app build? It would be a basic app that we ask it to build. We'll see if, without any planning or anything, let's just see if they can one-shot it and what sort of app they come up with from that prompt. The second test is going to be a planning test. So what we're going to do is we're going to explain a game we want to build, and we're going to ask each model to create a PRD for how that game should be built. So that's going to test their planning of how they go about planning a project and creating a PRD. The final test will then be the execution of that PRD. So we'll ask it to take the PRD that it's created and build the game based on that PRD. And then we'll test the game and we'll see which game is better and which model does a better job. So those are the three tests we're going to run through. Before we get started, I just want to quickly touch on the models that we are using and what modes we're using for the test. So you can see on the left hand side we've got GPT-5 Codex High as the model we've selected. You can see also that it thinks longer for better answers, so it will take longer than the other models to respond, but we should get a better response. We're also starting here in agent mode, so we're going to allow it to just execute. And as mentioned, the first test is just going to be to one-shot an app, so we want to be in agent mode so that it can just start building straight away. On the right-hand side, we've got GLM 4.6 selected as the ZAI model, and we've also chosen Act mode. So again, because we're going to ask it to one-shot an app here, we're in Act mode so that it can go ahead and build straight away. Okay, so test number one. What we're going to do here is ask both models to create a simple app for us here. So you can see the prompt is identical for both. And as I showed earlier, we're in empty directories here for both projects. The prompt is pretty simple and straightforward. Build a simple to-do list web app in one HTML file. The requirements: an input field with an add button, tasks that appear in a list with delete buttons, use local storage to save tasks between sessions, center the layout with clean CSS, no frameworks or external libraries. So very basic to-do list web app here. We'll hit enter on both of these prompts and we'll see how they go with the build. Okay, so we've got both apps open in our browser now. This is the Codex version. We can see here it's got a to-do list heading. What do you need as the description in the text input box. We've got an add button, and then we've got a little box at the bottom that says all caught up, add your next task above. So what we'll do here is we'll add a few tasks in here and see how it works, how the functionality works. We've added grocery shopping. We'll add wash the car. If I press enter, that also works. We'll do wash the dog as well. So we can see here I'm adding items to the list, so it works. The functionality is working. We've got a red X here, so we can cross that off once we're done. We can't change the order or anything. We can't tick off items that we've done or see an archive, but it's a pretty basic prompt and instruction we started with. So that's the Codex version. Now we'll jump across and have a look at the GLM 4.6 version. Okay, and here we have the GLM 4.6 version. We can see a very similar build to Codex. We've got to-do list headline at the top, the same text input box with what needs to be done. We've got an add button at the bottom, and it says here no task yet, add one above, and then we've got a colored background, which I think visually looks good. We'll do the same here. We'll test the button. We'll add grocery shopping. We'll add wash the car, and we will add wash the dog as well. You can see here the functionality is the same as Codex. We're adding items and they then have a red cross. We can click that cross to get rid of them off the list. So they've both executed the task successfully. They've one-shotted this simple to-do list app. Let's now jump back across, and I might just do a follow-up prompt to both to say add some more advanced features. We won't say any more than that. We'll let both Codex and GLM 4.6 decide on their own what the additional advanced features should be. And we'll see here now their creativity and they're planning to see what they can build with just a simple prompt. Okay, so we're back in Cursor here, and you can see we're just going to follow up with a basic prompt here to say, great, now add 3 to 4 advanced features to extend the functionality of the to-do list. And we're saying the exact same prompt to both, and we'll see how they go about now using their creativity to come up with some ideas and implement those features into the to-do list app. You can see that on the right hand side, GLM 4.6 has come up with 10 potential ideas for additional features. I like that it's actually listed all those out, so you could potentially choose your own, or this is where you could jump in and say implement 1, 2 and 6 or whatever ideas you like. It looks like it's gone ahead and just chosen the 4 it likes, so we'll click save and let it build. On the left hand side, we can see Codex is building. We can see it's planned advanced feature additions. It's running a command. It's designing advanced task features, finalizing feature decisions. On the right hand side, we can see now just off the screen there that GLM 4.6 is making some changes to the code. So it's updating the HTML file. So we can see both are still working. We'll review both files after they've completed the build just to see how much code it's taken to create this file. GLM 4.6 is still making some changes and just asking for approval as it goes. And we can see here GLM 4.6 has finished, so again it has finished the task before Codex. And the response from GLM 4.6, I'll just hide this other file briefly. I've successfully enhanced the to-do list with 4 advanced features that significantly extend its functionality. Advanced features added: task completion with visual feedback, inline task editing, priority levels with color coding, and advanced filtering and task management. So that sounds like a pretty good list of additional features that GLM 4.6 has implemented. You can see here in its response it's also included additional enhancements, and it's wrapped up the response by saying the app now provides a complete task management experience while maintaining the original requirements of being a single HTML file with no external dependencies. If we then just drag this across to look at the actual to-do file here, we'll scroll down and just see how much code it has written in order to get to this point, and we'll compare that to see which one's more efficient. So 666 lines of code, that's quite a bit. We'll see how Codex does. Codex is still working, so again it's taking quite a bit longer here than GLM 4.6 to execute the task. So let's first quickly jump across and see the code file that Codex has created. And if we scroll down the bottom just to see how much code Codex has written, recall that we can see on the right hand side still that GLM 4.6 has written 666 lines of code. Codex has completed the task with 507 lines of code. So from an efficiency standpoint, Codex has managed to complete this task with quite a bit less code. So that's got to be a tick in terms of efficiency to Codex. But now the real test, let's jump across and test the functionality and see which app actually performs and works better. Okay, we've got both apps open on our browser again. We can see here this is the Codex version, the updated version after the functionality's been extended from that follow-up prompt. And we can see there's clearly some additions that have been made. We've got all active and completed tabs here so that we can filter the tasks. We've got a clear completed button so that we can tidy up and archive or fully delete items once we no longer need them. Everything else looks the same. So again, we'll test here. We'll add grocery shopping as a task. We'll add wash the dog, and we'll clean the car as well. So you can see here we've now got a few additional features that are included. We've got a checkbox that we can tick. We've got an edit button as well, and we've got the red cross to delete the item which we had previously. If we flick across to active, they all still show up, and if we flick across to completed, we can't see any. No tasks match the current filter, so that filter looks like it's working. Let's click edit on grocery shopping. That allows us to change the text. So we'll change it to grocery shop. Now we can tick, and then we can see if we tick that checkbox, it gets removed from the active list. If we go back to all, we can see the tick remains and it's now crossed out, so we can see that that's completed. If we go across to completed, we can now see grocery shop here in the completed list. We can click clear completed. That's going to get rid of that task completely from the app. If we go back to all, we should now only see 2. So it looks like it's working. The functionality is really good. We can see it's working here again. If we go to active, we can only see 1. We can see the completed task. So it has added that additional functionality. It's working perfectly. Visually, it looks really good as well. Nothing's broken since the update was made. And again, as mentioned, about 500 lines of code was the total, so pretty efficient. Let's now jump across and have a look at the GLM 4.6 version. Okay, so here's the GLM 4.6 update. We can see that there's already a slight issue with the formatting. We can see the add button slightly outside of the box, so that would be something that we'd need to fix. We can see it's also implemented a similar feature to Codex where we've got all active and completed. We've also got a priority scale, so we can see here we can select low, medium or high. So let's say high priority grocery shopping, and we'll add that to the list. We'll again choose wash the car and wash the dog. So we've got all high, so what I might do actually is just, let's delete one. We'll add a medium priority. And we'll do a low priority as well, just to test that. So we can see the priority labels are working correctly. We've got high priority tasks, medium and low. If we click edit, that works the same as the Codex version where we can now edit the text here. Let's again do the same edit we did for Codex. We'll just change it to grocery shop. If we go to active, we can still see the color code is also reflected here visually. Let's tick a couple off here and see how that works. We can see the clear completed button pops up at the bottom. So with the Codex version, the clear completed button was static, but in this GLM 4.6 version, it pops up once we do tick off a task. So that's a pretty good feature. If we go across to active, we can see the one we've ticked off is no longer there. If we go to completed, we can see the task we've ticked off. Clear completed works, it gets rid of that, so it looks like it's working. So the only real minor issue here with the GLM 4.6 build was the fact that the add button's slightly outside of this box here, so we would need to prompt it to fix that formatting and make sure it's all inside the box. Pretty similar end result here. The only difference again that you would maybe point out is the fact that GLM 4.6 has done this with about 160 extra lines of code to get to this result. So they've both executed the task successfully though, so pretty good performance by both. We'll now jump across to the second test of the video. Okay, so we're back in Cursor now and we're ready to proceed with our next test. This test is going to be a test of each model's ability to plan a project. So what we're going to do here is ask it to create a PRD based on a game we want to build. The third and final test will be to actually build the game. But first we're going to test its planning ability and its ability to create a PRD. So you can see the prompt we are providing to both models here says you're the product designer and creative director for a small browser game called Avoid the Box. The concept, the player controls a character that moves left and right to dodge falling boxes. Write a full PRD that captures your creative vision for the game. We've got a bit more guidance in terms of what it should explain and include in the PRD. And finally, write it naturally in your own style. Focus on clarity and creativity so a developer could start building the game right after reading this. So we're being really clear here about what we want it to do. Build a PRD that's detailed and explains exactly how to build this Avoid the Box game. So let's hit enter on both prompts for Codex and GLM 4.6 and we will see how they go about building this PRD for this Avoid the Box game that we want to create. Okay, so both models have finished. They executed that really quickly and they created the PRD within the chat window. So let's first review the Codex version of the PRD. We can see the sections. It's created purpose and excitement, audience and experience goals, core loop, difficulty curve, scoring and progression, player feedback and failure, visual direction, UI and UX, audio direction, signature touches, stretch goals, success metrics and production notes. So it's covered a lot of topics here for the PRD that it has created. From experience, Codex can usually execute pretty good apps based on similar looking PRDs to this, where it's just a bit of text and they've explained each section. So what I'm going to do is just say write this PRD to a .md file in the project directory, just so we've got a record of the PRD that it's working to. I'm not going to ask Codex to make any changes. The purpose of this test is just to see how they would create and plan a PRD based off a single prompt. So all I want to do here is now write that to a file so that we have a record of it, which it is now done. So we'll flick across and just have a quick look at the file here. And we can now see we've got a markdown file with our PRD, about 67 lines of code total for our PRD. Let's now jump across to the right hand side and see how GLM 4.6 has done with the build. It has gone ahead and written the file already, so rather than providing the PRD in the chat window, it actually went ahead and just wrote the file to the project directory. We can see the response here. Task completed. I've created a comprehensive PRD for Avoid the Box, a minimalist browser game about avoiding geometric shapes. The PRD is written in an authentic indie game designer voice and covers all the requested sections. And then it's just got an overview of the sections it's created. Let's just drag this window so we can see the PRD. So we can see here we've got game designer, version, date and platform, game vision and purpose, core philosophy, target audience and experience design, emotional journey, core gameplay mechanics, player controls, box behavior system, difficulty progression, death system, scoring levels and power-ups, level structure, visual direction. It's got an art style philosophy, color palette, visual effects, animation principles, audio direction, unique features and environmental effects. So a lot more detail in this PRD than what Codex created. We've got stretch goals and future updates. It's also gone ahead and provided some ideas for future versions. So you can see version 1.5, multiplayer features, content expansion. So some ideas here of how we could further develop the game in the future. Success metrics and analytics, technical specifications, monetization strategy, which is optional. We didn't ask for that, but it's gone ahead and created that as well. And a development timeline and a conclusion. So we've got a wrap up here of the project as well. So 336 lines of code in the PRD that GLM 4.6 has created versus the 66 from Codex. So a really big noticeable difference in the content provided here in the PRD from both models. The true test will be how they then turn this PRD into an actual functioning game. But very interesting to note how GLM 4.6 has gone into a lot more detail here. So if your sole purpose is to create a really detailed, thorough, in-depth, production-ready PRD, then GLM 4.6 might be the better way to go. So we can see here we've got a really thorough and in-depth version created by GLM 4.6. So that's something to note. You could potentially ask Codex in a follow-up prompt to build it out into a lot more detail if you wanted something similar to the GLM 4.6 version. But in terms of a one-shot response for building a PRD, this is a really impressive and detailed response from GLM 4.6. Now for the true test though, we're going to now ask each model to build the game that they've planned out in their PRDs. So we'll be able to see here how they go about the execution phase and whether the PRDs have been effective in providing enough information and instruction to create an exciting functional game. So we'll provide the identical prompts for the build and we'll see how they go. So the prompt that we're going to provide here is pretty simple. It just says, using your own PRD as reference, build the playable game, avoid the box, focus on creating a version that's fun, functional and visually appealing, staying consistent with your own vision and technical approach, return the complete code or files required to run it. So again, we've got the exact same prompt for each and we're allowing them to build the game based on the PRD that they've created that's unique to that model. So we'll hit enter and we'll see how the build process goes for each model. So both models have completed the build. Codex on the left hand side took 8 minutes and 23 seconds to complete the build. GLM 4.6 on the other hand only took 3 minutes and 38 seconds. So in terms of speed, GLM 4.6 wins. Let's now just look at the actual code file to see from a code efficiency standpoint which model has used less code to build the game. So here are the files for the game, and we can see that both models have gone with a different approach in terms of how they've built the game itself. From a coding perspective, we can see that Codex on the left-hand side has created a CSS file and a JavaScript file, and then it's got the main HTML file that runs the game where it's referencing and calling on those other two files. So the actual HTML file for the Avoid the Box game on the Codex side is only 61 lines of code. And then we jump across and we can see the CSS file is about 221 lines. And the JavaScript file here we can see is quite extensive. There's a lot of code here in this JavaScript file. We've got 729 lines of code here for the JavaScript file. If we jump back to the HTML, that's the main entry point for running the game, and we can see that it is 60 lines of code. So I like the fact that Codex has created multiple files here. It's separated some of the functions into different files. That potentially makes it easier to solve bugs in the future if anything does break, and potentially makes it more scalable if you do want to add more features. So that's a pretty good approach, I think, and the code looks pretty good from a first look. On the GLM 4.6 side, on the right hand side, we can see that it's just created the one HTML file that has all the code to run the game. I'll just open that up rather than a split screen. I'll open that up into a full screen so we can get a better look at the GLM 4.6 code. So we can see here it's got the same sort of functions as the CSS and the JavaScript that Codex created, but as mentioned, it's just created everything in this single file. So everything for the game is in this HTML file. I'm still scrolling here, so it might end up being a similar total line of code that it's used. You can see it's actually used quite a bit more, so it's got 1100 lines of code. Again, that maybe is an issue if you want to, as I mentioned, potentially future-proof your code for potential issues and debugging. It's probably better to separate into smaller files, which Codex has done. GLM 4.6 here, 1100 lines of code in one file. That's potentially could cause some issues later. You might need to refactor this into separate files later anyway. So an interesting approach here from GLM 4.6, the fact that it's decided to just do everything in one file. Again, it's worked off its PRD. That's not an instruction I've given, so it's just gone ahead and built it in the best way possible. But that's a look at the code and the build process. The true test is actually the game itself and how it looks and how it works. So let's now jump over to our browser and test the game. Okay, so let's start with the Codex version. We can see the interface here when we load the game. It says Avoid the Box, the name of the game. We've got our score and best score at the top here, a combo, which will obviously be some sort of scoring mechanism. On the right hand side up the top we've got Night Shift Sector 7, so it's obviously given us a theme here for the game. We can see some instructions: glide through the neon night, dodge hollow crates and chase impossible combos, arrow keys or AD to move, survive, style, repeat. We've then got Wave 1 Dusk down the bottom left and Systems Nominal. This is just again a theme thing, and then obviously the level that we're on. We've then got touch, swipe left or right to steer, and we've got the button to start the game, Begin Night Shift. So let's hit the Begin Night Shift button and test the actual game. Okay, so there's an issue already with the build. The button doesn't work. I'm pressing enter and clicking the button and I can't start the game. So that's an immediate issue with the build and the functionality. Before I jump over to GLM 4.6, what I'm going to do is actually prompt Codex to fix this bug so that we can test the actual game itself before we move on. So we'll note how each performs from a one-shot where we can see that clearly there's an issue with the Codex version. We'll re-prompt to see if it can fix it and then factor that into our decision at the end. Okay, so take two with the Codex test here. I prompted it and just explained what the issue was. It worked for about 30 seconds to a minute and made some changes. and the button should now work and launch the game. So let's hit the button and see how we go. So we can see there are some obstacles. The boxes are falling from the sky. There are different shapes, different colours. We can see it looks like almost like a skyscrapers in the background as just an additional visual. We can see the score going up as well. You can see bottom left I've moved to wave 2, blue hour, so obviously there's level progressions where it should get a bit harder as we go. Nearly got me there. But now that we've fixed the button issue, it is functioning really well, so the game's working. I'm sure it's meant to get harder, but so far it's not too bad. I've managed to avoid these boxes pretty easily so far. And we can see we're up to wave 4 neon surge, so wave 5 overdrive. So we're obviously progressing through levels as we go. You can see those boxes are starting to get a lot faster now. So obviously as we progress through levels it gets a bit harder. I think I thought I almost lost there, but must have avoided it. Again, I might just lose the game here so we can go on to the next test, but it's working. It's followed the instructions. Now that we fixed that button issue, which really was a minor issue if we really think about it, the game is working and operating effectively, so a pretty good result from the build for Codex. There we go. So we've lost. It says run complete. We've got a score, combo peak, near misses, new personal bests, and then a run it back button here, which restarts the game. So that's the Codex version. Again, it was only that one issue with the button at the start, and a prompt and 30 seconds of work fixed it, and we've now got a functioning avoid the box game. So pretty good result here from Codex, an impressive result. Let's now jump across and test the GLM 4.6 version. So here we have the GLM 4.6 version. The visuals aren't quite as good initially as Codex. Codex had a lot more detail with and more theme with the information it had on that start screen. There's also an issue where I lose my mouse pointer when I hover over the game square, so I can't actually click on the start game button because I can't see my mouse pointer. I just slightly appeared there, but we can see there's also instructions: use the mouse or arrow keys to move, right click or space for time dilation. So there are instructions, but the button is covering it, so another formatting issue for GLM 4.6. I'll see if I can click on this button. I can kind of see the mouse hovering. Here we go. I can see the pointer now when I get to the button. So we'll click start game here and we'll see what happens. We can see that we actually can't really move left and right or up and down with our arrow keys. We've got some sound going on. You can see some obstacles as well. It looks like the mouse. I need to use the mouse to move my object here. It was meant to have objects falling from the sky, from above. It looks like there's just random objects spinning around on the screen, so not exactly what we had in mind for the game. We can see there's some features. So the thing I just picked up said shield activated. There's a lot of shapes now moving into the screen, but they're not really falling and forcing me to move out of the way. I picked up another bonus there which cleared the screen. So it's working as a game. It's not exactly the game we had in mind or what we briefed, but it is a game that's working. I'll crash into one of these objects and see what happens. So it looks like it's kind of crashed. Hitting that object has made the game crash by the look of it. So there's a few issues with the GLM 4.6 build. The mouse pointer is hard to find to actually start the game. The functionality is not really what it should be. There's no objects falling from the sky that we need to avoid. The mechanism's not really working because those bonus features pop up to give you shields and clear the screen, but there's no objects on the screen that are a threat really to losing the game, so it doesn't really fit in terms of a working mechanism. And there was also the issue where when we hit an object which ends the game crashed, so the audio just sort of freezes and the screen freezes. So there are quite a few issues with the GLM 4.6 build, but we gave Codex the chance to fix the button, so I'm going to go back to cursor, I'm going to prompt GLM 4.6, I'll mention the issues that I'm seeing, and we'll see if, with one prompt, whether it can fix the issues or not. Okay, so I explained all of the issues with the game in cursor to GLM 4.6. There were 6 key issues that I explained, and we covered everything in that prompt. We can see here, I've now relaunched it, and it's fixed the issue with the mouse pointer. I can now use the mouse pointer and see the mouse pointer on the screen. It's also fixed the formatting issue where the button was overlaying the text. I've already gone ahead and tested it though, and there are still some issues. We'll click start game and have a look. I still can't really use the arrow keys. It doesn't really move, it just snaps back into place, so it's still a mouse only game. We can see the objects are still moving really slowly. They are coming from above now, it looks like, but again they're moving really slowly. These power up features keep popping up, and we can see there's still not much of a game mechanism in terms of needing to avoid these shapes. The other one we're constantly moving out of the way, which is how it's designed to be, so you've got to try and avoid it, but this one they're just sort of hovering around. So it's still not quite working as it should, and I explained that that mechanism wasn't working correctly when I did prompt it. I'm just going to crash into one of these objects now, and we can see it still freezes and crashes the game when you hit an object, so it hasn't fixed that issue either. So to recap, we've given GLM 4.6 a chance to fix the issues. There are still some pretty glaring issues with the actual game, so it hasn't quite hit the brief and executed on the task as well as we would have hoped. On the Codex side, I think it's a really impressive result again from Codex. The only issue with the one-shot build was that the button didn't work. That was a 30-second fix. All I said in the prompt was the button's not working, and it fixed it straight away. So it was a minor issue, and once that was fixed, the game then worked perfectly. So Codex has nailed it. It's created that PRD. Again, as I mentioned earlier from experience, the PRD that Codex created wasn't super in-depth, but it's still able to take that information and execute and build a really great game here, a working game with minor issues, only one issue really, and that's a really impressive result from Codex. So the fact that it was able to use that PRD as a guide and build this game from just a couple of prompts is really impressive. You have to give the points to Codex in this test. As I mentioned, GLM 4.6 had some glaring issues. The game doesn't really work. I'd need to go back and prompt it again to try and fix the issues that were there. The other thing to point out was the fact that the process that Codex went through to actually build the game was a lot better, where it had a CSS file, a JavaScript file, and then the HTML file all separated. Those functions are separate, a lot easier to debug as well when that is the case, whereas the GLM 4.6 version, it had 1100 lines of code in the one HTML file. As a result, we saw a lot of issues with that, and even though I've prompted it and clearly explained what the issues were, it's still unable to fix most of them. So potentially that's another reason that's caused that issue and making debugging harder, the fact that it's just written 1100 lines of code in one file. So another tick there again to Codex. So Codex wins pretty comfortably here. GLM 4.6 worked a lot quicker. It performed pretty well with the first task, but once we got to this more complex task of actually building a game, Codex has blown it out of the water. So a clear winner for me. Codex wins. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more comparisons, I'll probably now test Codex versus Sonnet 4.5 to see if it can build a game. If you want to see more comparison videos, make sure you subscribe. If you want to see any more models tested, let me know in the comments below and I'll do some more tests. And again, thanks for watching.